We have two really big problems as business owners, especially as moms running businesses. Number one, we don't take time off. And number two, if we do take time off, we are not actually off, if you know what I mean. So today on the Mom Founders Table, we are talking about not only how to take time off, but to actually be off when you're off. So first, let me start this by saying that the idea of creating your own business, no matter how long you've been in business for, the idea of creating your own business, usually in that idea, part of the why behind it is to be able to be your own boss, right? Is to be able to have freedom and flexibility and make your own schedule and make your own rules. And it is so great that we have that idea of like, you know what? I don't want to work for anybody else. If I'm going to work this hard, I want to do it for my family and my benefit and do it on my terms. Sadly, we are pretty quick to recreate traditional 9 to 5 or corporate settings, depending on what your background is. And that is because it's the discomfort that we know. And so taking time off as a business owner can feel impossible because we're at the helm, right? It is, if we aren't there, what could happen? And I think there is a delicate balance between being too hands off in your business and being too hands on, right? There definitely is a line. And depending on your industry, depending on what your team looks like, this really varies. But for the most part, I will say that business owners don't take enough time off. And moms running businesses definitely don't take enough time off. And if they are off, they are actively thinking about all of the responsibilities that are work and outside of work related. So it's those 25 tabs in our heads that we always have open. And that can be really, really exhausting. We need time off, but we need to actually learn how to be off when we have that time off too. So first off, let's just be honest about how it's uncomfortable to take time off. Again, I think the idea of time off sounds really great. We're like, yes, we're going to take vacations and we're going to travel and we're going to go here and we're going to go there. But a lot of business owners would rather not go through what it feels like the struggle, or it feels harder to take time off because of the stress and the overwhelm that it causes, or they're taking time off and they're just working from a different location. So if you feel like that you cannot take time off because you are directly overseeing the day to day and that there's no way for you to continue to either make the amount of money that you want to make and take time off, and or you feel like that things would not work with you taking a step back or taking time fully away, then you definitely want to listen to today's episode. We're going to talk through these things and, really the tactical side of it, that is making sure that you're planning for time off, but also the mental side of it, because as you have noticed here, the majority of business problems when you reach a more established level are mental. Yes, there are absolutely tactical changes that we have to make in the business, in the operations, in the procedures, in our communications. There are tools, tricks, tactics, things that we have to change. But even with those changes, we have to address our mind and what we believe about business and about leadership and about success too. And so before we get into, okay, first, how do we actually take time off from the business? It's important for you to recognize and remember why you started your business. It's important to go back to that seedling stage of where there was creativity and there was innovation and there was excitement and there was joy and there was this idea of being able to build something that would create an impact in the world, create an incredible lifestyle for your family, be able to create financial freedom, and all of these things that are so easily forgotten the further we get into it, right? And so it's important for us to bring those to the forefront before we have this conversation today, because I need you to remember why you've started. I need you to go back to those beginning stages of why. Why did you take this step? Why did you build this? Because again, when we are so in the day to day, when we start adding children and we start adding other responsibilities and we build out a bigger team, we forget. And so if I go back to my start in entrepreneurship, which was actually in 2011, I think I filed for my first LLC in 2012, but previous to that, I was definitely running some probably not legal operations via cash under the table out of my garage. So we'll keep that between us. But all of that being said, if I go back to my why, I remember, if you're not familiar, where I started was actually in fitness. And that's where my love for transformation and change, born out of my own story, really came to fruition. And so I was a personal trainer at this box gym. And I remember, we had there was the sales team that would sell the clients, and then there was the personal training team. And so the sales team would sell the packages, and then they would give us the clients, which was great. We didn't have to do any of our own selling, but the cost of that was pretty great because they were charging anywhere between like $40 and $50 a session. And I was making $7 a session. And I'm like, man, first of all, it makes me feel like a grandma, because I go back to like, man, kids these days, like people that just start their businesses online and like go into coaching or go into like having high ticket offers. I'm like, man, y'all don't even know the struggle, right? But that's neither here nor there. I built from the ground up, and I'm so proud that I've been able to do that. But anyways, so I was getting paid $7 a session, and I was like, man, why are they charging 50 and I'm getting paid 7 and I'm doing all the work? If I'm doing all the work and I'm the one creating this relationship with my clients and this transformation, having these conversations, because even when I was a personal trainer, my conversations with clients between sessions were like about like their stress and their sleep and their anxiety. I just always was just so focused on like getting to the deeper why for people, which has inherently become my gift that I didn't know at the time. And so, long story short, my why was heavily driven by that. I'm like, well, if I'm going to do this work and create this change with people, I can do it on my terms. What if there was clients that I very honestly and transparently did not enjoy working with? And I was like, if I work for myself, I can choose who I want to work with, how I want to work with them. I'm not held back by the rules of this facility, and I'm not held back, financially, because there's a cap, right? I can only work so many hours. And so all of those things were like, okay, well, that inspired like my move into entrepreneurship, which is when I started taking my own personal training clients. And there was a time where I was working at the gym and in my garage. Anyways, just like origin stories are so fascinating to me. I love hearing where people came from, and even thinking about my origin story, right? Like that was my why. I wanted to be able to create a bigger impact. I wanted to create that financial freedom for myself. I didn't want to be held back or capped by somebody else's rules. And so why did you originate? Why did you start your business? There was something that I can bet is related to some sort of flexibility or freedom in one or multiple areas that you desired. And so it is not lost on me that the majority of my clients, when they come to me, feel like they've lost that, right? Because we're so in the business, we're constantly problem solving. There is just one thing after another. We feel overwhelmed with all the responsibilities. And so it is hard to feel like we have any sort of freedom. It's hard to feel like we could take time off, much less be actually off. So that's like the first part of this, is just addressing and remembering why you started, going back to your origin of your business and thinking about what you wanted to create when you said yes to entrepreneurship, and remembering that and thinking about, at the end of the day, you still have the control and the freedom of choice and change to be able to create exactly what you wanted from the start. If you feel like you have been trapped or imprisoned by your business, that is by choice. And that might be a tough pill to swallow, but I'm not here to not tell you the truth. Where we are in our lives and our businesses is a result of our choices. And so while that may feel hard to take ownership of that, it also is very freeing, because that means we can make different choices. And so if you make different choices, be those choices, changing things inside of the business, changing the way your team is set up, changing what you're offering, changing the hours that you work, all these little changes, these small tweaks that create big leaps, as my client Kathy says, these things add up, right? So I want to inspire and motivate you to create the change that you've been avoiding, because you started your business for a reason that is deeper than just showing up and doing the work every day. So taking time off, sometimes we just don't because it feels harder to. Like, let's just name that. And so there is planning that goes into it. Like, I think about when I plan our family trips, and they take me a long time to plan because it involves time and energy and effort, right? And so I understand that there is a piece of this that's just avoidance because it feels easier to just work and hope that the space opens up one day. But we don't know how long we're going to be here. That's just the truth of it, right? And so if we constantly just tell ourselves that after this happens, then I can, we're going to continue to put ourselves back in the same position. If you don't believe that you can live your life fully and run your business in a way that promotes freedom and flexibility until you reach a certain level, or until you sign a certain amount of clients, or you reach a certain level of revenue, you'll probably notice that whatever that number or end goal that you had, that goalpost has kept moving as you've continued to succeed. First it was $1 million, then it's $2 million, then it's 3, etc. Right? And so we have to be honest about when is enough, and what are we actively avoiding because it feels easier to just do the things that we do in the day-to-day. So I understand it can feel easier to not take time off because it requires a different way of planning and thinking to take time off. But one of the things that I know for sure is that taking time off and being fully off is one of the greatest things that you can do for your business and for your team. Let me tell you why. One of my clients, and she's been a client for like a year and a half at this point, and she recently had her first baby. And so we put together like a maternity leave plan of action. She, batched content. She did all the things that she needed to do. She delegated out to her team. She executed on this plan, and talking to her while she was off, she expressed to me how much peace she felt and how calm she was, and how that was actually being reflected back in her baby, and how her baby was calm, and how it's like she honestly expected it to be harder, and how it's been amazing. And that brought me so much peace, because that's like, we can't get that time back. I remember with Cameron, my oldest, was working. He was born at the hospital, and my 2 girls were born at home. So with him, I was in the hospital. I remember working in the hospital in labor. And I just am like, oh man. And then like, he was a couple days old, and I'm answering emails again. And I'm like, man, I wish that I would have like held him a little longer. I wish that, and I'm grateful that I gained that perspective before I had my next 2. But it's just stuff like that you don't know until you know, right? And so she's stepped completely out of her business, right? And she took a couple of months off. We just had our first call back, and I'm just like, getting all of this from her, and she's telling me how peaceful and calm, and like she ended up having one of her biggest launches ever in the history of her business, with the most signups for anything. And I'm like, this is exactly the proof that you needed, that it's safe for you to step away. And so this is why I say stepping out of your business is one of the best things that you can do for yourself and for your team, because it shows you that you can. And any problems that come up are good because they're teachable opportunities that allow you to assess what those gaps are. At the end of the day, if we're building businesses that are completely reliant on us and only us, and us being on 24/7, we are doing ourselves, our team, and our clients a disservice. And so stepping out is important. It's important for you to do this before you even feel ready to do it, because there are certain things that you will not see unless you step out. And so it might be an instance where you step out and you're like, wow, I planned really well and set everything up and empowered my team, and it went awesome, and I was able to just be fully off. And that might bring you the trust and peace that you need to then the next time you take off actually be mentally off as well. And or it might show you, hey, this fire happened and this is how we handled it, and that's not how you want it handled. So then you have to come up with a new procedure or process to handle that issue. But it's only good that comes of it, right? Because even if problems come out of it, problems are good because they show us where we still have work to do, right? Be that personally or professionally. And so you want to step out. You want to step out before you're ready. You want to fully step away. You want to close everything down. Here's the other thing. We have to think about, as mothers, how we might be taking away and micromanaging our teams without even realizing it. Right? So one of the things that my client noticed is that because she was off, she wasn't checking in to Slack. And one of the things that was expressed to her from her team member was that her team member actually felt more empowered, more confident. She got more done because my client wasn't constantly interrupting her with questions. And so this is just a tiny piece of like things that we do as business owners because we love our business and we care, that may be actually taking away from the effectiveness and the efficiency of our business, right? So you need to prove to yourself that you can. If you keep staying in the spot of like, okay, well, I'm just too busy to take off, then you're just going to keep working, and then you're going to regret that you didn't take time off. So it's better to take time off before you're ready. So how do we actually do this? One of my favorite terms is reverse engineering. And I love reverse engineering because it is all about starting with the end in mind. It is all about thinking about, what do we want the result to be? What is the goal? What is the end that we want? And then we build into that, right? So how I do this, and this is where we get into a little bit of the tactical pieces and the planning for you to actually be able to take time off, is at the end of the year, I will pull up my kids' school schedule, and then I will sit down and I will map out dates that I'm going to be off. So I'm planning for the whole year. And so I get to plan out, I sat down with Eric and did this, and we did it together. Times for parent vacations, because that's something that's important for our marriage. So we've decided that twice a year, him and I are going to travel without the kids. And then family trips, right, is important for us to explore, to take our kids to new places. Even though it can, traveling with kids can be hard, right? Let's just be honest about that. But I think that depending on how you look at it and where you go, the good can definitely outweigh the bad, right? So family trips, parent trips, birthdays, anything that is like aligned with your personal values that feels important for you to do. Maybe you have something that your entire family does every year. At the end of the year, I'm sitting down and I'm just marking off dates that I'm not going to be working. And the great thing about this is then like my team is clear. Those dates are marked off in my calendars where clients can't book that day. And it's just set, right? And so because of that, everything is planned around that. So when we're looking at like even recurring tasks or things that need to come from team for me to review or whatever it is, then I already am like, okay, well, these days I'm off, so that needs to come to me by this date, right? So this is what I mean by reverse engineering. You have to plan. You have to say, I'm going to take these dates off, and then you have to take them off, and then everything needs to be planned around you being unavailable. And that's what I mean when people are like, okay, well, I could take these dates off, and oh, but I have this call this day. But just ask that call if they can move to a different day. You know, there's so many little things that go into this where we're just so afraid to ask for what we want. And again, like it's our business. We need to run it in a way that feels best to us, because when we are our best, we do our best service. And so I want you to sit down, and you can do this now for the rest of the year, and you can start doing this more frequently, is like sit down and mark, and it doesn't have to be a vacation, right? Maybe you are, you know, we are very privileged to have grandparent support so that we can travel without our kids. I don't know what we would do without them, honestly. So you may not have that. And so maybe time off looks different. Maybe it needs to be a staycation, you know, but there are ways that you could do this based upon the support level that you have. And the important thing is that you just mark time off in your calendar, and then you take it off. You plan your tasks and your responsibilities to be unavailable. And so this primes us to find solutions of like, if I do this thing every Wednesday and I'm going to be off that Wednesday, then I need to move it to Tuesday, right? Like instead of just being like, well, I work every Wednesday, so that's not going to work. So now that we've talked about, okay, here's how we actually take time off. Let's talk about how to actually turn off when you are off. One of the things that I want to tell you is that if you are used to being a high achiever, if you are used to being rewarded for how much you produce, if you are used to working a lot, it's going to feel uncomfortable when you take time off. And that's one of the misconceptions that really messes people up, because they think that it should feel good. And in reality, it doesn't feel good because it's new and it's unknown, and so it's uncomfortable. So here's some things that you need to do in order to be able to turn off when you're off. First, recognizing that it's not going to feel comfortable. A lot of times when we feel the discomfort of stillness, when we're not used to being still, then we're like, okay, I need to fill this because I'm doing something wrong. If we know, okay, this is going to be uncomfortable for me, I'm going to feel bored, I might feel anxious, I might feel guilty, just know that up front. And so then going into it, you have realistic expectations. So number one, I want you to get rid of any temptations, right? So a great example of this is if you have any apps for work, you know, things like Slack, or any team communications, email even, remove them from your phone. Like if we are a recovering alcoholic, let's not just expect that when we're trying to recover from drinking that we should be able to be in the same room with alcohol, right? So let's treat it, I know it's a very severe way to look at it, but I think we are addicted to overworking, and we are addicted to our work. Number one, because we usually enjoy our work, but number two, because it is just so inherently built in us to overwork that the shift out of overworking, again, is uncomfortable. So get rid of any temptations that you have. Don't bring, when you go on vacation, don't bring your laptop. Don't give yourself the opportunity, and you're going to have to sit through that discomfort. The second thing is to busy your mind with something else, right? And so some people will say, like, you just need to learn how to be still. You need to learn, like, how to be bored. And I agree with that. We do. But there's also stepping stones to that, right? Like when we're learning how to be physically still, like with our bodies, and like be okay with like sitting, it's okay if we need to like read a book to keep us sitting. So thinking about other things that you can do to busy your mind, right? If you're on vacation and you have activities planned, I don't think that for everybody an ideal vacation is like just going to a tropical place and laying in a hammock all day. For some people, they might enjoy that. But if you are truly uncomfortable, not just because you are being forced to be still, but because it's not enjoyable for you, those are two different things. I'm not somebody who loves to just lay around all day. I like to move and be active. And so when we travel, we typically are out walking and exploring and looking at things. And it's not because I can't be still or don't want to, you know, be okay with being still. It's just because I like to see the places that I'm at. So it's okay to recognize like kind of what your style is. You want to have times for rest and recovery, but you also are allowed to move. It's just evaluating why, right? Like I don't feel any sort of guilt if I'm still. I don't feel anxious if I'm out by the pool on a Thursday reading a book. That doesn't make me anxious. But it used to, right? So it's okay for you to busy your mind with something else during your time off. You want to fill that space that you've created with something that is not work as you're learning to stop overworking. And then thirdly is to just know and accept that discomfort. And this is kind of what I talked about previously, is if you go into a vacation or time off expecting that it's going to be grand and it's going to be amazing and you're just going to, you know, lay by the beach for 5 hours and you're going to feel so rejuvenated. And then you get there and you're laying there and you're like, what is my team doing? What's going on? What are my kids doing? And you're anxious and you have all these tabs open in your head. It's not going to be enjoyable, right? So understand that there will be a level of discomfort, but like any other change, you have to sit in that discomfort. You have to be able to say, this is uncomfortable for me right now because it's new, because it's something that I'm not used to. But I know that on the other side of this discomfort is change for the better. And so just reminding yourself of that when you feel inclined to like reach for your phone and check your email or check in, because it's like, that's what you're used to. That's the habit, that's the pattern. And that's the wiring in your brain too. It's like, especially with social media, we're so quick to reach for social media when we're bored. And then also the last thing to really think about is like the guilt and the anxiety. You can, when we're talking about how to actually turn off when you're off, once again, these are feelings that will be alive when you are learning how to turn off. And so much of this is just understanding that those feelings may be present, but also understanding that those feelings don't have to dictate your action. Just because you feel guilty or anxious or wrong or uncomfortable doesn't mean it is wrong. And so that's really the most important thing to note here. But really, two tactical things that you can do are getting rid of those temptations that you have for, to reach for anything else and to distract you from that discomfort. And then also busying your mind with things that are not work as you're in this transition. So I hope that this has allowed you to go back to your origin story, to remember why you started your business, and then to also think about, okay, I'm going to take time off. I'm going to work with my team and my support system to plan for everything that I need and to delegate out and to create a plan so that I can fully step away before I feel ready, because you'll never feel ready. And I want you to go to your calendar. I want you to recognize the origin story, remember why you started, and then I want you to go to your calendar. I want you to mark some days off. I want you to talk to your team about it and make that plan. And then I want you to think about, for the time that you're off, what can you do during that time? Ensuring that you have a plan. You're not going in with the expectation of you just being okay with doing nothing, right? Because that would be unrealistic as you're navigating this change. So that's what I have for you today. It is important for you to take time off. It is important to be in control of your own business and your own life, and to take back that control if you feel like the business is controlling you. And if you need further support, I would really encourage you to join the Mom Founders Table community. This is our free Facebook group where we are talking all things motherhood, business growth, business strategy, tactics, mindset, all the things that you need to be able to lead a life and a business that has freedom and flexibility at the core. So we will put the link for the Facebook group in the show notes, and you can head over there and join us, and we will talk to you next week. As always, I appreciate you taking a screenshot and tagging us on the Mom Founders Instagram as well, to let everybody know that you're listening and to encourage other mom business owners to listen in to this weekly podcast. So thank you for listening. Enjoy your week and take some time off.